Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day you are checking this video out. Welcome in. I am Coach Sherry. Listen, reading is fundamental, but we have to fall back in love with reading. I was thinking about the content for this video and what I would say, and I don't know why, but it just came, it made me remember that line, when did you fall in love with hip hop? You know? And so my question to you is, when did you fall in love with reading? I know for me, it was when I was a young girl, and my mother used to take me to the library, to the bookstore. You know, we always had times and moments in the household where her and I would just read. And I really appreciated that because for me, reading took me places. You know, it took me into other people's lives, into other places around the world. It exposed me to different careers and opportunities, and it exposed me to women who were fearless. You know, my mother had me reading autobiographies about Madam C.J. Walker, Mary McLeod Bethune, Thurgood Marshall, you know, people that were pioneers. And it made me know that everything was possible just because they were able to accomplish it. I remember reading Dennis Kimbro's book, Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice, and just the stories that he would put in before each chapter of people of color, African Americans, that have overcome things, endured, and in spite of their situation, their circumstances, they still achieved, they still thrived and were successful, were excellent in what they did, were trailblazers. And that gave me encouragement to read those stories. You know, J. California Cooper was one of my favorite authors, and I remember in the 90s working in Manhattan, and back then, books were everywhere, you know, of course, in bookstores and in libraries, but also on the street. Those street vendors with their tables filled with all of the most current African American novels, and J. California Cooper books were always among them. And I always, you know, would search every week, like, did she come out with a new book? Did she come out with a new book? Because I loved them. I devoured them. Reading for me back then was like eating. You know, then meeting my husband, dating him, and he was an avid reader, and I loved that. Sometimes we would have dates in bookstores. You know, we would go to a bookstore and we would come out with an armload of books to read. That's why all of our homes always have libraries, because we are a reading family. We instilled that love for reading into our children when they were young. Now, when my children were young, we didn't have all the technology that they have now. So I know some of you may say, well, Coach Sherry, there's so many other things that kids can get into that we can get into. I know that, you know, with computers, your phone, your tablets, but you need to put a book in your children's hands. You need to have a book in your hand too. When our children were young, you know, whenever we would go somewhere, they would always either have book in hand or definitely a book in their bag. They were always in the midst of reading something. And now, fast forward to today, and when I ask people, you know, do you read? And they'll be like, no, ooh, I don't have time for reading. I used to read. I don't read anymore. And I'm thinking, like, what a lost art is that? You know, and then people are running around, rushing about, stressed out, flustered, having challenges with focus, can't meditate because they can't clear their mind, and they wonder why. And if you're wondering why too, you might be saying, well, Coach Sherry, I don't have time to read. But you absolutely do. It doesn't take hours to read. But if you could take 10 minutes, 30 minutes to an hour to just pick up a book and read that book, give yourself a goal. Maybe you're going to read into that next scene or into the next chapter. I'm not saying you have to read the whole book in one setting, no, but have milestones within the book that you're going to have as stopping points. Set a timer. But reading is a form of meditation because it takes your mind off of whatever else that might be jamming up your brain. And, you know, it gives you that time to focus on one thing and one thing only. And when however it happened, I'm not going to blame it on one person, but however it happened where reading was not a thing anymore, especially in our community, in the Black community. Because when I talk to white counterparts, white colleagues, I ask them, do you read? And they absolutely do. And when I tell them I read too, they are very interested in the book that I'm reading. However, when I come and I talk to, our people, and I'm like, do you read? And they're like, no. And if I'm telling them I'm reading something, they have no level of curiosity. And I'm not putting everyone in a box. I'm not putting everyone in the same lane. I'm just saying this is the things that I'm noticing. We have to get back to reading. And when I say we, I mean our people, us. We, us, cousins. We have to read. We have to get our children to read. Instead of having them on their tablets or telephones or watching television, have moments in your household when everyone is reading. They need to follow your lead. So if you're not reading, if you're still walking around with your device or whatever while you're telling them to read, that's not going to work. You're not building generational wealth that way. And wealth is more than money. Wealth is also a mindset. Wealth is also actions and habits. So how are you training them up? What are you demonstrating to them? Have moments in your household where everyone is reading. It's quiet time. Everything is off. And again, it doesn't have to be for hours. And eventually, when your children fall back in love with reading, when you fall back in love with reading, it will be hours because you'll look up because you didn't want to stop reading your book. I'm looking down because I have my book right here. But reading, it also opens your mind. It opens up your vocabulary. You'll find that you have even more deeper things to discuss with people, different perspectives. And all the books does not have to be biographies or autobiographies. I mean, fictional books can take you places too. A lot of them are based on real life things. It's just a story, telling a story, a different perspective, a different character, a different location, but that can happen anywhere to anyone. So when I have clients that tell me how challenging it is to meditate, to get into that quiet place, they don't know what to do with themselves. Even if they get into their closet, now they're looking around of things they need to organize. They're always distracted by things, even in their quietest moment. Pick up a book. Be distracted by words on a paper. We are our ancestors' wildest dreams. Our ancestors, in many cases, would have been lynched if they were found reading. They would have been beaten if they were found reading. They weren't even allowed to learn the alphabet. And here we are with access to so many words, so many books, so many things, and it's free. We can do it freely, and we choose not to. If we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, and their dreams included being able to read, to pick up a book, to hold a book, as their wildest dreams, why aren't we still? We owe it to them, those that came before us that couldn't, to continue to do so that we can propel our family, our future. So stop with the excuse of you don't have time to read. And there's so many different types of books for all different interests. Revisit your bookstore, get your library card. Heck, if you're in New York, I know with a library card, you can get into most museums for free. So that's a benefit. And libraries are making a comeback. I'm telling you, the one here in Charlotte and Uptown, they're renovating it, and they're actually putting a little bar cafe down on the first level. It's going to be a whole vibe in there. Go to that bookstore. See who are the emerging authors. Check out those authors that you used to enjoy back in the day and see if they're still out there writing, like the John Grishams. There was not a book that John Grisham wrote that I didn't have. And, over time, I lost track with it because like you, I paused with reading too as life was happening. But I'm picking it up and I'm finding that my love came back with a vengeance. And I'm grateful to have a family that loves to read, my husband, my children. My son has written 2 novels. My children, my young adults, they have a book club. And I'm not saying you have to have something as structured as a book club, but just check out what other people are reading. Have those discussions. Instead of talking about the Diddy case and the Diddy trial and the Beyonce concert and this or that or politics, pick up a book and talk about that. All right. I hope I encouraged you to fall back in love with reading so that you can look back on this day. And when someone says, when did you fall in love with books? You can say, I fell in love with books on May 14th, 2025. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let me know what book you're reading. It's been my pleasure. Remember, every day, practice so hard that when you get in, you will always play to win. I am Coach Sherry.